One of the worst ways in the world to get a job is to send a resume in the mail, through the mail to get a job.
That doesn't work, though?
That doesn't work. It only happened one time in my career of running the studio in 10 years, and that was Jim Rosebrook. It really doesn't work too good to do a resume and to mail it, usually. And how have y'all been doing here in the last 2 weeks?
Great. Learn lots.
Do you, if I were, if I had a job, which, isn't necessarily there, but if I had a job opening right now and you came in, and I said to you, as an apprentice engineer, would you be able to do solo a session? Go in, set up the mics, and get the band situated, and sort of help them maybe clean up a little bit, at least right here, listening, communicating, kind of help them on their production. As you get this question posed to you personally, you feel confident. You may stumble a little bit, but basically head on, you can do it. You'd know to clean the heads of your tape machine. To take all your diamond rings off, right? Not to scratch the heads. You'd know to, to make sure that your microphones are not out of phase with each other, not too close together, right? And you'd know about in your mix down that if you're mixing in mono, if you're mixing a stereo record, that your center channel information, like bass and voice, in mono it gets louder. You know that? That's called center channel buildup. Something like, running around the collar. But would you know that if you were doing a vocal session and the singer kept singing out of tune, what would you probably assume from that?
Can't hear himself.
He probably can't hear himself. What if the band is playing real badly, real loose, and they're not playing together? What could you possibly assume? Perhaps they can't hear each other. The real funny thing about bands, they oftentimes come into the studio and for the first time they say things like, I've been playing bass with you, or I've been playing this bass with my drummer here for 10 years, and that's the first time I've ever heard you. That's amazing. That's incredible, but that happens. Rarely do musicians have perfect monitoring situation in the studio, live. And they play that way for years and years and they never hear each other. Well, what in the world's it all about anyway? The idea is they're to hear each other and to play together and to work together musically. So, as I ask you that question, are you, in your attitude and in your knowledge right now, feel that you're a second engineer? That you could go work with somebody that's like Billy Sherrill? And that in your job, that you could be a good person, a good assistant to him? Okay, that I'll tell you very frankly, that's a very personal question I'm asking you. Yeah.
We're short for the band.
Okay, y'all got anywhere over here? You know where I got this at? You ever when you fly, if any of you fly on by airlines, that is. You ever fly by airline? That they got their little magazines. I got that from American Airways or Airlines, whatever it's called. And I was reading that, and lo and behold, I thought it was interesting. I ripped it out. At the chagrin of the stewardess. Anybody ever fly Allegheny Airline? Anybody ever fly Piedmont Airline? How about Ozone? They all should rename all those airlines and call them something like Muskrat Airline. I tell you, I took a flight Piedmont going down to West by God, Virginia, and we were flying down there, and the pilot gets on the horn. He said, "Well, we're approaching our landing." I looked down, and I swear it looked like an old Greyhound bus station. I knew that was the airport, right? And I couldn't see any pavement. All I saw was grass, and it was really a religious experience at that. I really considered the ways of the Lord at that time. I still do, but it was really interesting. Well, let's talk about the realities of the job market and what it means to go out and to get plugged in to the industry. Let me just tell you, working in a studio is not a glamorous job. You all have perhaps tasted of it. You got to kind of get bit by the bug, as I put it. You got to love it. If it's just a 9 to 5 job for you, then it's not going to work out. You got to be possessed by the love of music and the love of making music on tape. And I'll tell you, when I was 19 years old and graduated from high school, I got all my money together that I had from my paper out and went and made a record. And from that time on, I got bit by this bug, and I just recognized it as a fact in my life. I'm going to be in the music business as long as the desire is there, and I'll probably be there all my life. And I think we're going to see Paul McCartney when he's 70 years old making music. I hope it's better than it's been lately. Just the personal side. And I think we're still going to see Mick Jagger somewhere. You know what I mean? I don't know what it's going to be called at that time, but I think that somewhere out there, there's going to be certain people going to stay with it. If you're easily discouraged, then you need to take a course in encouragement. You need to have positive self-confidence. You got to be at the same time humble. I don't know if you could pick up on Billy Sherrill when he came. I wasn't here to hear him, but one thing I like about him is when he's working in the studio, you know, he's real open to any suggestion. And he's also a little shy. He's a little humble, you know. He can be wrong. I like people that can be wrong and say, hey, you know, like I said, I was wrong on this. And, you know, you got to be flexible. You got to work with egocentric people. You know, I don't know. The bands vary in the world. You know, they range from not so good to incredible. You know, not everybody can play like the Cars. You know, I mean, you probably had that in the bands that come here. You probably had some bad ones. You probably had some turkeys. And you can't tell a really genius musician by the way they look because, you know, everybody wants to belong. And so the musicians are not any different from anybody else. So they look the role, you know. I've told you about that before. They can look just like Rod Stewart and sound like somebody else, you know. And that's the name of the game. I mean, everybody is unique and different, but in the industry, one thing you'll find is there's a lot of egos. So one quality that I stress in your trying to get a job, and also once you land the job, is that you maintain a certain humility. You know what I mean? Don't be an expert asshole type person. I'm saying that because what you're dealing with is when you go out and you're working with these old pros, you're dealing with a lot of pride. You know, there's two kinds of pride. There's the right kind of pride and there's the wrong kind of pride. You know what I'm talking about? And the wrong kind of pride is that don't try to tell me what to do. I've been doing this all my life. You know, you're just an upstart. Let me tell you something. You could go into probably most studios with the knowledge that you have and find a major mistake that the engineer's been making for years in the studio. Studios are not infallible. And oftentimes in the business, about 50% of studios are operated by individuals who own it and engineer it. You know, they run the office. It's a small business. And 50% of the studios are like that. So you're walking into the guy's turf, you know, and that's his studio. He may have his monitor speakers placed wrongly. He may have a terrible sound. He may have an echo chamber that sounds terrible. He may have the worst taste in the world as far as musical taste. But it does no good in the diplomacy that we all have to go in there and try to set the guy straight in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Because what will he do? He will react, you know. There's what I call the dinosaur element in music today and in recording today. And that is the old way. Now, I hope and pray that I'll continue to be progressive in my approach. You know, like when digital first came out, you know, like I was not for it. It's because I didn't understand it. It was really better. And you're going to be seeing people, when digital becomes commonplace, you're going to still be seeing some of these old guys in Midwest studios who at one time in the 60s were like really hippie type guys, you know, all of a sudden 45 years old, and they still got the old analog machines. I'm looking 1987, let's say, 7 years from now, 1990. You know, when you're all maybe 30 years old or something, 35, and you're going to see it's going to carry on where we're going to get a generation gap that exists even right now. See, a lot of the guys that run studios now were in the big war, you know, ham operator type guys, radio guys, and they get into the studio and they know a little bit about electronics and they do the studio. And they're a ball to work with. There's an old guy up around Syracuse, New York. Anybody that's from Syracuse? There's an old guy up there that's got a studio. that is ancient history. But he's such a classy guy. He keeps his studio immaculate. His equipment is old, but it's not funky. And he maintains it. He's got a tin ear, but he gets pretty good sound. And he's making a hell of a living. You know, he's doing a lot of things wrong, but he's doing a lot of things right. He's got integrity. You know, he's got responsibility. He's a gentleman. You know, and he's got a whole lot of quality about him. And you know, to be a success in your endeavor, you don't have to be perfect. You know, I mean, let's talk about, let's talk about tracks that aren't perfect. There's a lot of hit records that you hear today that are very imperfect. They got distortion on them. I told you about the Battlestar Galactica theme music. They spent $50,000-$60,000 making the original tape, and it's got distortion on it. And these guys, this was supposedly recorded and mixed by Hollywood professionals, whatever that means. You know, I mean, nobody's perfect out there. Not everybody's got it all together. We're all growing. We're all students, and we're all working together. And one of the key things is in your approach is to be confident, but at the same time, don't show all your cards. Be humble. Okay? I'm just talking about attitude and getting a job. Don't come off as a genius. Don't come off as an expert. Nobody likes experts. Remember that, especially people who aren't. And then the experts, you know, what they argue amongst themselves. So I'm just giving you a common sense approach to an attitude. But I think motivation is where it's at. I mean, if you come on with the right attitude and make a good impression and people like you, that's the name of the game. The handout that I've given you, it basically deals with making contacts. I mean, it doesn't say anything about reporting in there, but there's a lesson about reality and a psychology giving them a job. Now, in the music business, 90% is who you know, 10% is what you know. And that's a shame. It really is. I wish it wasn't that way. It should be 90% what you know and 10% who you know, right? That would be democratic and fair, and that would mean all the talent would rise, right? How many people do you know that are talented, that maybe are a musician or something, that's starving their butt off? You know, well, I know a guy that can play guitar, and I'm telling you, he's better than Eric Clapton, honest to goodness. He's as good as Joe Walsh. He's good as Joe Walsh, if not to my liking, some way better, taste-wise. You know, it gets to a point in musicians where the taste is different. It's really hard to define who the best is. And you can't hardly make a living. And it's because of not making the right contacts and not being a business person. You know, it's easy to cop out and say, well, you know, I'm not business oriented. I'm into creativity. I'm into being, you know, into my art. You know, like I'm not into being business like. I'll leave that to the brilliant people. Well, that's a cop out. Learn as much as you can about business and learn as much as you can about responsibility. Let me give you a little thing that I've put into practice. And I've all my life been very unorganized. And this has been something real good for me. It's something that some of you probably already know about. I'm going to be getting into concrete ways here of getting a job here shortly. I'm prefacing all this by your personality and about your togetherness. I'll tell you what I look for when I engage an engineer. I look for someone that is responsible. Number one thing, responsibility. I mean, you don't have to write these down because you probably know them to be true, but I'm underlining them because when I meet somebody and I'm trying to make a determination, if I take this person on, good thing no one was standing right up when we were sitting there. You ever go to class and the teacher spits on and says, it doesn't happen that, but something did? Well, it was, anyway. When I'm looking at someone and trying to make a determination whether the commitment of employment is worth doing, I try to read as much as I can about the person's personality. Personality is very much where it's at. If I like somebody, you know, and if I feel like they're responsible, then they got a shot, you know, when there's an opening happening. And it's you know, I'm trying to make the determination when I walk out this door and close the door, is that cat going to be in charge? Is that person going to be able to handle those musicians when they get rowdy, or, you know, if they have a problem? Is that person going to be able to take care of business? And that's the big question that every employer is going to ask, whether they say it to themselves or not like that, about you as an individual when you come to meet them. Okay, but let me give you just a little thumb sketch of an organizational plan that I use, and that is, it's goal setting. Now, there's three kinds of goals. There's immediate goals. That's the day-to-day goals. And then the second goal is the mid-range goal. And the third type of goal is the long-range goal. What I call the big picture. Looking after the big picture, right? See, we all got the big picture. And you know, when the big picture's over, so they're laying us in the ground, right? They're putting us under, and you got the people there, you know, maybe crying or not, and thinking about your money, how they're going to divide it up. And the relatives are you know, I'm going to get that dress and make sure that my other sister doesn't take her best clothes. I mean, all kind of things, you know. And I'll tell you, a funeral is an amazing thing. It kind of sets your thinking in motion. At least it did me a couple times. And that's the big picture. You know, it's from the day you're born to the day they put you down, and we all got to go through it. I mean, as sure as anything. And so you set them goals up, and you think, well, what the hell am I going to do in my life? What am I all about? You know, you try to align yourself to what your ultimate future is all about. Well, there's nobody, I don't think, knows everything about the big picture, but there's certain things in life that it's really nice to think about, you know, like it maybe planning for the future that, you know, you get married and you have a family, and that you have a job that means something to you, and that maybe you're a painter and you want to paint, or you want to design a house and you build it. You know, Robert Redford said by the time he was 40 years old, he wanted to write a book, which I guess he did. He wanted to direct a movie, which he's doing now. He wanted to build his own solar house, which he did. I mean, these are kind of things that are like in a person's life, you know, they're achievements. And the way our Maker made us is that we have to be creative. If we're not creative, then we're sad. So find out what you want to do in the long run, and make these goals. Okay? All right, those are long range goals. You know, those are things that don't happen overnight. Let me go back to the first type of goal, and that's the short term goal. The short term goal is the day to day. And the way you do your day to day is when you wake up in the morning, it only takes a few minutes, or even the night before, make a list of all the things that you should do during that day. Okay, so you got 10 things you got to do. I mean, it could be anything, like you got to call the dentist, and then you got to pay your rent, you know, and then you got to, you know, go get a haircut, and then you got to make some what I call action phone calls, and you got to go out and meet somebody for lunch. I mean, these are things that you've got to do, you should do. And what you should do, here's the key, what I'm about to say is make your list of 10 things, and in order of importance, number it. Okay? And in order of importance, do them. Now, if it's something like real trivial, like brush your teeth, you know, brush your teeth, it doesn't take but a minute. But if do the important things first, and as you do them, mark them, put a line right through them. Now, if you put down 10 things during that day and you've accomplished 5 of them, then you've, in my opinion, done, you know, you've had a good day. And then what you do is the next day you take the 5 that you got left over to do, and you put them on your list, and you put them against the new day's itinerary, and then you again select in not numerical order the importance. You see the idea there? Now what happens is, by doing all those step by step, little by little deals, your mid-range goals become, you know, they become more apparent. You're on a direction. You're not like a ship without a rudder. You're doing something. And if you want to, keep it like a diary. And that way, you know, you can feel good about, well, I did this, and I did this, and I did that. You know, and these accomplishments give us self-esteem and give us confidence to go on it. To know the reason why we can, you know, go over mountains is because we've already gone over small mountains. And I'm just saying this because this is a rough industry. It's very rough. There's no security in it. There's no regularity of hours. If you're looking for 9 to 5, forget it. If you're looking for job security and even respectability, a lot of people think it's really groovy to be an engineer, but there's a lot of people that won't think so. You know, a banker, he won't think that's so great. You know, it's not in a lot of society. It's not a great job to have. It's almost considered like a musician. You know, musicians are not considered, you know, great risks in society. But you know, I'm just saying that it's a very non-respectable business to some people, and knowing that and being prepared for it is the way to approach it. Now, your mid-range goals are things that you want to do in life that are part of the big picture. You know, they all kind of gel together, the total, you know, package. But like a mid-range goal for me, perhaps would be like, I want to make an album. Okay, I want to build a house. I want to design a house. I don't know anything about it. I want to design a house. So I'm going to buy some books and read about it. probably make a whole lot of mistakes. I want to build a studio. Well, I'm doing that now. One thing I found is once you want to build a studio, you're not done. You're never done. You know, you're constantly thinking about your next situation in the studio, your next improvement. The inside of the Studio C has changed like 6 times. You know, and will always be changing. I've decided that I better accept that as a fact. It'll never be the way I want it because we're always changing. You know, perhaps losing weight, 10 times, 15 times, whatever. Set these goals up and we do them and we're making progress. We got to make progress in our life. And sometimes it seems like we're not, but we've got to maintain. If you maintain honest, you'll wake up one day and you'll turn around and you'll see how far you've gone. We did our first big placement list. Did Jim tell you that? We sent it out and we've had amazing results in the placement. We've had like in the last 10 days, we have 4 or 5 people employed. I told Jim he wants to put my name on there. He's doing a good job. I have to put up with him. He's really good job. But we're going to help you as much as we can. And what we're going to do is give you a letter of recommendation that basically, for those of you that have succeeded, most of you have, and that will just tell your would-be employer that we have, you have gone through the program, and we would recommend that an opportunity be given you to begin. See, what you really are is qualified beginners. To be a classy, seasoned engineer, you're going to take years to do it. We've handed you a guitar, we've taught you the chords C, F, and G, and we're going to say, hey, you're a beginning musician, and you can go play in a band. Now you can start, but you got to stay with 3 chords for a while. Get them 3 chords down, and you throw in A minor. If you can get fancy, put a C major 7 in there. Move that little finger right there off the fretboard, and and we're just, you know what I'm saying? You're in the league. You're not world champions, but you're in the league. And I know some of you have studios at home, and that you come here for background. And I think that you probably have discovered there's a lot of information that I was an engineer for years and was making a lot of mistakes because I was self-taught. And as if you grow into something, of course, you should learn all the time. And so whether you've been a beginner or whether you've been somewhat experienced, I think the workshop has been good for you for the most part. I can't answer your individual, I can't ultimately say it's great for each one of you, but I hope you've all had a good experience. We're growing and we're changing constantly, and next year will be, I hope, better and improved and different. And sometimes different isn't better, but I'm just saying that it's a quest. We're all students. We're all moving on. And basically, if you get your house in order where you're in charge of your life, you know what I'm saying by being in charge of your life? By being in control of the situation and taking responsibility unto yourself, not your parents, not your girlfriends, not your wives, not your children, not our government. Please don't count on our government. They got enough problems. Count on yourself, and your Creator has given you a power, you know what I'm saying? To take care of yourself, and it's an instinct. Look at the critters that walk around us, that live and breathe. They've got instincts. We got them too. We just don't tune in sometimes. We're so automated and so plussed by television. And I took my kids, went 10 days in one of these RVs, went down Smoky Mountains. Anybody been to Smoky Lake? Boy, I felt like I died and went to heaven, man. Look, Smokies are beautiful. First night camping, man. Where's the TV? Brought a portable TV. You know what I mean? We're all affected by modernization. And when we get back to the basics, I know better. And there I was watching Walter Cronkite to get some fear from watching the news. The news is selling fear, don't you? They're selling you buffering. You know what I mean? They give you the fear, and then they give you the antidote for it. It takes some time. That's true. When I was recording Billy Sherrill, when I first walked in the studio, I knew that I was in good shape. I knew that I was in the hands of Middle America. When I went in there looking, you kind of think about the rub being on it. I walked in there, and you know what they had sitting in front of the window? Ball and Maylocks. Right? I knew that I was in the same situation of being with us here. But basically, we're opening up the door and we're sending you out, and a lot of you will do well, and some of you won't. And the realism of it is, and I'm not copping out, but it goes back to you as a person, your own responsibility. I give you that heeding that you're responsible and in charge of your own life. And the sooner you can take charge, the better off you're going to be. Now, you're going to make mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes as much as any person. But, that's how you learn. I'm pretty dumb. I can fall down maybe 2 times and I'll finally learn to be careful. You know what I mean? Some people fall down 1 time, they got it. Some people never fall and they got it. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to jump off a cliff and experience it to know that it's not good. Right? But, I've fallen off a lot of cliffs and even jumped head first. So it's nothing wrong with making a mistake. It's just being able to learn from our mistakes. Moving on, forget the past. The past doesn't do anything for you. You know that? That's the thing. The only thing it does for you is the positive thing of learning from it and moving on. Okay, now let's talk about the psychology of getting a job. What do you do to get a job? Well, Willie is going to include in your graduation packets a bit of a survey on how to write a proper resume. Okay, the way I feel about resumes is they're part of a backup system. They're there to support you as a personality. The most important thing that will get you your job is your first impression you make with people. Okay, your ability to sell yourself. Remember, you got to constantly sell yourself. Go with your style. Don't try to be something you're not. If you're humble and quiet, hey, make that a public asset in your life. Don't try to be loud and obnoxious. I mean, at the same time, if you're loud and you got outgoing personality, take advantage of that as a quality too. I'm just saying, maintain your integrity and you'll do fine. Be honest, watch out for cons and crooks and jerks, and there's a big jerk factor in the music business. You know what I mean? Don't ever put yourself in the hands of a jerk. You know what I mean? Just see the movie The Jerk came out.
Yeah.
It had its moments, right? Anybody see the Blues Brothers?
Yeah.
Great movie. Everybody agree? Oh, I thought that was great. The shopping center scene was great. I swear, in Columbus, there's a shopping center that looked exactly like that. And man, that I had fantasies about. I walked through that mall now. If I could just, Okay. Now, you remember that the studio business is an enterprise business and based on the idea of a service for dollars. The recording studio manager or owner is trying to maintain the business in order to make a profit, right? Sounds simple. A lot of studios don't make money. I'd say 25% of the studios are break even, and barely make it. The other 50% are, operate at a decent profit, and probably 20-25% are really making it good. And the difference is management, is the manager. Now, when you go see about a job, you got to be ready. And who do you go see? A, the chief engineer. B, the studio manager. C, the secretary. Okay, you go see the manager. Okay, or even better, the owner, if you can get to the owner. A lot of owners are absentee owners and they're not even there. But find out if the owner's there, and if the owner's there, go see the owner or the manager. Okay, now why don't you see the chief engineer?
Probably in a session.
Pardon me?
Probably in a session.
She might be in a session and too busy thinking about making hit records than to interview a new fight. Or what else? Pardon me? He doesn't directly hire you. What else may be there? He might have a feeling, an attitude that you might be trying to take his job, his gig, right?
Yeah.
Possibly. I'm not saying that all people are insecure, they're chief engineers. Okay, so know that basically whatever his reason is, he can't really engage you anyway. But there's nothing wrong when you go into the studio to meet the engineer and, make a friend. It's easier to make a friend than make an enemy. It costs more to make an enemy than it does to make a friend. So go in and at least, introduce yourself. Now, there's 2 ways to go as an engineer or as a producer. First, you can be independent engineer or an independent producer. Or secondly, you can be for hire, engaged, working as an employee. So you'd have an employer-engineer relationship. I would advise you decide about that as you get into it and take different approaches in different places. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. And can someone tell me when it's 5 minutes to 6, 10 minutes to 15 till? Oh boy. Okay. I have to move. If you think that you don't want to work for anybody, and you think that you'll be in a situation where you can live at home, perhaps with your parents, or you can maintain a job that you have already and you don't want to lose right now. There's nothing wrong with having a full-time job and doing music business part-time. You know that? You work your job and you can get your chops together and you can get into it and be sure of it. And then you don't have to be crazy to be in the music business. I mean, that's part of the bad image that we have already. You can be very responsible and secure and very careful in your decision making. I'm not saying to throw everything away and take a guitar down your back and walk barefooted into the sangria of music. It doesn't work that way. I mean, it does, but there's a big disaster. Don't ever make a gamble you can't afford to lose. Right? Anybody ever shoot craps? You got to shoot craps one time in your life. Come on. You ever lost it all? Oh, that hurts, man. I think it's the best lesson you can learn. Don't gamble. Don't gamble. Okay. Specifically, have your resume ready. Okay? Write your resume in such a way that it's readable, that you don't come off like an English professor. Okay? Put down things. You'll get the form from Willie. Put down things like your personal interests, your personal hobbies. Hey, if you've had a paper route for 10 years, that means a lot, man. If you were an Eagle Boy Scout, put that down. If you were in the Girl Scouts for 12 years, put that down. What the employer is looking for is responsibility. Look for a rock. He's looking for someone, and when he goes out the door at night, he knows that the person is in there taking care of business. Right? Okay. Anything at all. If you collect stamps, how many people collect stamps that are willing to admit it? Me too. Man, I like to look at them, man. I got a great collection. Okay. Any hobbies? If you ski, if you went to Ohio State University and graduated in agriculture, write it down. Anything at all. If you took a correspondence course, anything that indicates something. If you're a carpenter, boy, you got a real advantage. Put that down. If you're a semi-skilled carpenter, if you work concrete, if you've done electrical work, if you've done, if you've been a bit of a designer, if you're a songwriter, great asset. You can write lyrics. If you're a musician, put that down. Anything at all that would indicate that, a general description of your abilities. The guy wants to know about you. Okay? There's all kinds of books on how to write a resume. We're going to give you a brief outline put in your graduation packet. I think it'll be close enough. Okay, now you're going to have your tape when you leave here. You've probably will have done 6 or 7 mixes. Take the best 2. Okay? And get those in such a way that they're first on the tape, or that you've got them on a tape by themselves. Okay? Scrutinize. Listen to your mix for a while and take your best 2. Okay, so that's your tape resume. You got your regular resume, your written resume, and your tape resume. You can either be an independent engineer, and that is to have your own studio, or be a for-hire engineer. Okay, that's an independent. Or you can be an engaged, employed engineer working for the other man. How many people here feel like they're someday going to have their own studio? Okay. It would be a real wise thing to do? Go work for the other man for a year or 2 and learn from him and him from you, and then go someplace else. Don't go next door to him if you want to be his friend. I really think ethically it's the normal thing to do. But, you can do what you want to. I don't think it'd be fair to him. I know people that do that kind of thing, but I don't think it's fair. But say if you live in Kansas, go to a studio in St. Louis and work there and clean out toilets and wrap mic cables for a while. One day, the engineer's going to say, hey, I don't feel so good. I've been up all night doing these sessions. I want you to take over. Honest to goodness, it'll happen because every engineer is a little lazy anyway. Billy Sherrill never moves unless he's got to. Honest to goodness. He never moves. But I figured it out. Finally figured out why he never moves. he has moved so much before in the past that he don't have to move as much because he learned, see. Honest to goodness, he's quick. He had me ready to go in 20 minutes and got great sounds. Okay, so you got your resumes and what you do. And you're going to either work for the man or you're going to work for yourself. And if you're going to work for yourself, you're going to be independent. Man, you're really out there with your neck on the line, man. You're walking on a branch that may break. You know, to start a little demo studio in your house, you should have at least $15,000, $20,000. That's a rule of thumb. Okay? If I had listened to that rule of thumb, I would have never started a studio. So you can break the law, but you know, sometimes it comes back to you. And what you got to do is just roll with the punches. You know, like I told you at the beginning here that I went and I bartered for equipment and traded equipment and did all kind of crazy things. That's not the best way to start in a studio, but it worked, and it, you know, it was really hard. If you've got $20,000 or can secure a loan, then you can set up a little demo studio in a garage. Okay, and when you're ready to build studios, call us. Well, we used to have a couple books on how to build studios that are available. They're really pretty good. Get you started, and I can give you advice, and Jim can give you advice, and it's really a tough way to go. I would recommend you to try to work for somebody else first and learn. Okay, so let's talk about working for the other man approach. Remember, the guy's out to make a buck. Nothing wrong with it. We're an enterprise. I mean, look at Poland, but they're all the trouble they're having over there, right? Communism, socialism, nothing's perfect. You know, but I think the thing about democracy that is really nice is it gives you a chance if you're ambitious to be ambitious. And when you go out and you try to get a job, keep in mind you got to make the guy a buck. I mean, that's the bottom line. If the guy's going to pay you $200 a week to start, you got to be making $300. He's got to make some money off of it. Remember, you're an indentured servant. Don't you understand? That's what being an American worker is. We're indentured to a corporation or to a company, and there's nothing wrong with it if there's a value for value exchange, if we're being treated right. And that's why I'm saying don't work for jerks. Okay, if you're going to work for a jerk, be sure you get something out of it. You know. All right, now when you go in, the main thing to do is do not call and let the guy know over the telephone that you're looking for a job. Okay, you can write that down because that's specific. That is a dumb. Do not call the guy up and say, "Tell him you're looking for a job." Now, why?
Because he'll say no right away.
Because the guy's got his defenses up. He's talking to his agent above. It's easy to say no, goodbye. Okay, do not tell the guy you're looking for a job. However, this is the old foot in the door approach. You got to get your foot in the door. You got to get in the door so the guy will like you, right? You got to go in the door so the guy can understand your talent. Okay, what you do is you call him, you make an appointment to see his studio. Okay, now why is the guy going to be eager to show you the studio? He thinks he might be able to have you as a client, and let him think that. This is where it gets a little bit deceitful. Okay? The only reason I say this is if you're totally right up front with the guy, you'll never get to put him in the door. But once you get there, he can always invite you out, and he could say no, there's no opening, but at least get the opportunity to let him hear you out.
In December, I did exactly that. I called up the studio and asked just to see it, and the man invited me in. I looked it over. I really fell in love with it. It was just something I've never. It was the first time into a studio, and I talked with him perhaps about an hour, and I was in phone contact with him several times for the next couple of months, and he finally invited me to sit in on a session, and I sat in on a session. It wasn't really the greatest. It was hard to explain, but it was a bad band. He told me it was a bad band, but he treated them like they were top quality.
There you go.
He really did. And I talked to him some more. Unfortunately, he was having a little bit of health problem, and he had to shut down the studio for a couple of months. But I told him that I was heading for the recording workshop. He says, "Well, let me know before you go and when you come back." So
That's great.
there's a possibility right there.
See, the psychology of that is you go in, and you don't go in with your tongue hanging out looking at the gun.
Right.
You go in there. Now listen, this is the key to walking tall. You know, you all saw the movie Walking Tall. Okay, the key is that you go in there and you're not hungry. Don't ever get hungry. People don't like you when you're hungry. Okay, Go in there. The idea is you want to become acquainted with his facilities. For whatever reason, let him think. You're an independent person. You're going there and you introduce yourself to him. And you can tell him that you're a second engineer, you're an assistant engineer, or tell him that you're an apprentice, you're new, and that you want to see his facilities, and that you wanted to become acquainted with him, and let the guy will spend an hour with you because he's proud of his studio. He can have his, like I said, he can have wrong monitor speakers. He can be doing things wrong, but it's his domain. And every engineer or every studio manager owner wants to show off their studio. It's something that comes back from being a kid, I believe, when you get a new bike or something. Okay, so take advantage of that. Go in and, like I said, be humble, but be solidly confident. Introduce yourself. My name is Joe Waters. I'm an independent engineer. I'm an apprentice engineer. I just graduated from the recording workshop, and I wanted to see your studio. Don't ask for a job, first off. Okay? Don't put the red flag in front of his face. And, don't have your tape and your resume with you. Don't have it with you. That's tacky. Leave it in the car, okay? And you know what? Do that to every studio you can. Go and listen to some tapes, meet the people, get around. You are selecting a job as much as looking for one. You understand? You are not coming on, hey, I'll scribble you forward for you. I'll do anything you want. Please give me a job and work for free. Don't do that. Just make friends with the guy, okay? Now, in New York City, it's a little different, where it's more, hey, I got 5 minutes here. What's going on your mind? Or LA. Maybe more like Midwest. Hey, you can go in there and have a cup of coffee with the guy. If you're into AC/DC, you're into that kind of music, right? Don't go to a gospel music studio, unless you want to get into gospel recording. You know what I'm saying? Align yourself with the situation. If you look like Charles Manson, don't expect to get a job working at Gospel Light Recording in Hendersonville, North Carolina. You know what I mean? Just realize you're going to have it tough. At the same time, if you're militant, new wave, man, don't expect to go to a good old rock and roll studio, and fit in. I'm just saying, be all people, as long as it doesn't make you dishonest. Roll with the flow. Go with it. If you feel like you can get a job and you don't mind cutting your hair, fine. If it kills your soul, don't do it. Do something else. Try to find a studio where they're your company. My point is, become acquainted in the musical community. There is a musical community. They hate each other's guts. They talk about each other. Don't ever talk about anybody. Be positive. Never carry tales. Okay? Never carry. If you say anything, say fine things about people. You'll be allies to people. It costs you $15. Get some little business cards printed. If any of you got a permanent address in this world, and or a permanent phone number, remember, there's nothing permanent, but anything semi-permanent will do. And get some business cards printed up and say, Joe Waters, and underneath, independent recording engineer. Okay? And put your address, your phone number. If you know someone that's an artist, have them do your little logo. You don't have to make it, it doesn't have to be psychedelic with purple and orange and it's way out, glows in the dark and like that. Just something that's straightforward. And you know what? Plant these seeds, man. Go out. How you doing? My name is Joe Waters. Boy, you got a great studio here. And you're taking the guy's studio. He may have everything wrong with his studio, but if he's got a nice echo system, say, man, that's a great echo. But don't say, hey, man, like I've been to the recording workshop and yes, been listening to this system for 2 years out of phase. There's a great studio in Nashville, Tennessee called Woodland Recording. They probably do 20% of the hit records on Nashville. For 4 years, they have the bass drum mic wired out of phase. You didn't know it. Us experts. Every studio got something wrong with it. I told you about Gary Eliza's studio. The guy does the engineers for sticks. You go in, you close all the doors, all the so-called soundproof doors, and you hear dogs barking. You hear women walking down the street shouting to the children, pushing their baby carriage. Honest to goodness, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. He's got regular doors for his soundproof ISO booths. You know what I'm saying? The glass. It looked like he just called the glass guy up and said, "Hey, I think this is about this size here, so whatever you got will do." You go into his control room, and it's smaller than any control room we got. I mean, you wiggle. And he got this console that he made. It's ugly. One knob this big, another knob this big. It's supposed to be the singing. And he's got all these Japanese cassette machines behind him that probably cost $80 a piece that he's making dubs on. And you start thinking, man, this guy is a Grammy-nominated engineer. Well, what am I in? What is this? Is this a joke? When do we get to the real? The point is that there's no perfect studios. If they are perfect, they're probably imperfect, and later on we'll discover that something's wrong. Very tough to have a perfect studio. And when you go into the studio, be positive, okay? Make the guy's acquaintance. Say to him, I'd be glad to work with you. The key is with, not for. I had to work for him. One thing an employer looks for in an engineer is loyalty. You work for your employer and you talk highly of him, talk about him, always support him, and try to help the situation. Leave your card and you say to him the following. If you ever need anybody to help you, I will be glad to help you out. To sit in on a session. That's one of the best ways to get your foot in the door. That's how a lot of our engineers have gotten jobs. They would go out and you got to make the calls. You got to go see people. You got to go press the flesh. You got to politic. You got to be involved in lobbying yourself. You're selling yourself. Okay, we got to wrap it here. Leave the guy. If it come, don't feel like you got to nail it down in the first contact. Call the guy back in 2 weeks. How you doing? Or drop by back in 2 weeks. Drop in and say, just thought I'd drop by for a few minutes and see how you're doing. Keep up the relationship. And if you do that with 5 studios, and let me tell you something, they may say to you flatly, there's no job here. There's absolutely no job. When they say absolutely, then the chances are you got a real good chance because when someone's so sure, someone is bound to leave or get sick or something, the guy will call you. Honest to goodness, you keep those contacts up, keep those good contacts going, and follow up. That's the key. And you do that, and if the guy is interested in engaging, say, listen, I got a tape of some of my work. I'm recently trained, and this is my resume if you're interested. But don't go in there with it, with like a sign going in there. Here it is. Here's my diploma. Look, you don't have one. You're old. You go in and you take a realistic approach. I can help you out. You've been working 60 hours. Nobody wants to work 60 hours for 5 years. I did it. They did it very tough. The other thing you might do, if you have a good contact with bands, how many people here who are in a band or have friends that are in a band? That's a real good way of getting into a studio. It's to say to the owner of the studio, look, I can perhaps go out and drum up some business for you. I'll try. I can't guarantee, but let me go visit the bands. I know these bands. Let me invite them in, see the studio, and perhaps the guy and bring them into the business. So I'm just saying, be someone of value. Responsibility first, talent, making your contacts, making your acquaintances. Your resume and your tape resume are just their backup. They're backup. They're not the thing the guy's going to latch on to is your qualities as a person. Okay, I didn't really have time for questions, June, that relate to.
Okay, well, production and business do not emphasize in the test that engineering is the emphasis. And any questions on production or business will be quite general. So
just read your notes,
Yeah.
and it will be nothing foreign to that.
okay, Tony and Kip, I got messages for you.
Now listen, when my album comes out, you all buy 10 copies each. Okay, and then what you do is you get those 10 albums distributed, and then you get the 10 distributed to go out and buy 10 albums. You know what I'm saying?
I'm right here at 3 tomorrow, 3 o'clock sharp. You guys that want to make it, mix listening, Jones that music tonight. Okay, you involved, make sure you send it nice, mix it.